Ever since Lewis Hamilton made the historic and emotionally loaded decision to leave Mercedes and join Ferrari, the Formula One world has watched his every step as if witnessing a live experiment in cultural shock, legacy, and expectation. His arrival in Maranello was supposed to symbolize renewal, transformation, and the dawn of a new era for the most iconic team in motorsport. But as the season unfolds, a different narrative has begun to circulate through the paddock. One far more uncomfortable, far more delicate, and far more charged. The possibility that Hamilton is not only struggling with a failing car or strategic confusion, but also facing subtle, structural hostility within Ferrari. And for some, the tension has reached a point where whispers have turned into speculation that Hamilton might even be dealing with racism inside the team, not in explicit form, but through a cold, silent rejection that feels deeper than simple technical disagreements. Hamilton didn't just join Ferrari as a driver. He arrived as a global symbol, a cultural force, a political voice, a 7-time world champion whose presence carries more weight than any engineer, director, or marketing department is prepared to handle. And for a team as traditional and protective of its identity as Ferrari, this combination of talent and influence creates an internal friction that is impossible to ignore. At first, the public narrative was optimistic. Hamilton bringing his championship mindset, Ferrari embracing a new approach, an entire structure ready to modernize. But behind the scenes, the reality has been very different. Engineers closest to Hamilton noticed early on that some areas of the factory seemed hesitant, even resistant, to embrace the changes he suggested. Meetings became colder, interactions became shorter, and small decisions began to carry an emotional weight that should never exist in a professional environment. For a man who has spent decades navigating complex team dynamics, Hamilton recognized the signs. Something was off. The team wasn't responding to him as expected. And eventually, the silence became more meaningful than any disagreement spoken aloud. Outside the factory, the Italian press added fuel to the fire. Instead of receiving Hamilton as the hero who came to rescue the team, some headlines painted him as an outsider, someone who didn't understand Ferrari culture, someone who had to prove his loyalty. This tone, subtle yet unmistakable, only amplified the sense that Hamilton was entering a world that wasn't prepared to fully accept him. Media narratives shape internal perceptions, and suddenly, Hamilton's position seemed more fragile, more exposed, more isolated. It didn't take long for small incidents to accumulate. A technical meeting he was informed about too late. A setup change that went against his driving style and appeared to be pushed by sectors historically resistant to outside influence. A miscommunication on the radio during a crucial session. A passing remark caught by a microphone, delivered in a tone that implied more than the words themselves. In isolation, these things mean nothing. But together, under pressure, they form a pattern that cannot be ignored. This is where the speculation grows more troubling. Is Hamilton facing structural racism at Ferrari? No one is accusing anyone of direct hostility, slurs, or overt discrimination. The whispers focus on something quieter, harder to detect, and far more insidious. The type of internal discomfort that manifests through exclusion, indifference, and resistance to a figure who, by his very nature, challenges traditional norms. Racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind the way things are done. Sometimes it hides behind tradition, culture, hierarchy, or simple discomfort with someone who doesn't fit the mold established decades ago. Inside Ferrari, no one would ever openly concede such a possibility. Officially, everything is professional. Unofficially, some insiders say that Hamilton's presence disrupts the internal structure, forcing the team to confront issues it has managed to ignore for years. There are younger engineers who fully support him and see him as the leader they desperately needed. But there is also a more conservative faction, one that views Hamilton as a threat to the internal order, someone whose global influence, outspokenness, and cultural significance could force a transformation they aren't ready to embrace. The result is a divided environment, and Hamilton feels that division. His body language during interviews reflects fatigue, frustration, and a subtle sense of being out of place. When a pilot of his caliber appears emotionally drained, it rarely comes from technical issues alone. Hamilton has endured bad cars before. He has endured losing streaks. What he has not endured, at least not at this scale, is the feeling of being undervalued by a team that publicly claimed to welcome him as a cornerstone of its future. In private circles, some British journalists have hinted that Hamilton was stunned by the lack of internal support after his early criticisms of the car. He expected openness. Instead, he found suspicion. He expected collaborative problem-solving. He found defensiveness. This emotional disconnect suggests something deeper than competitive disappointment. It suggests a cultural clash, perhaps amplified by Ferrari's struggle with its own traditions, perhaps worsened by Hamilton's symbolic weight. The internal mood has reportedly grown heavier over time. Silent tension in engineering debriefs. Dry, uninspired communication between driver and strategists. Decisions that seem, intentionally or not, to work against Hamilton's performance window. None of it is explicit. None of it is loud. But in the world of structural prejudice, subtlety is the weapon. Small cuts that become a wound only the victim can feel in full. Is it racism? Is it cultural resistance? Is it professional insecurity within the team? Or is it simply the result of a failing car creating frustration everywhere? No one can answer definitively. But the combination of these elements paints a picture too complicated and too uncomfortable to dismiss. The possibility exists because the environment allows it to exist. And the rumors grow because the team has not been able to create a united, healthy, welcoming structure around a driver who was meant to be the center of everything. Hamilton, true to his nature, has chosen silence. A silence that carries more weight than any quote he could give. He knows the signs. He knows when a team is drifting away from him. He knows when a culture is rejecting him in ways no one will admit out loud. And he knows that once this type of fracture appears, repairing it becomes almost impossible. Ferrari risks losing not only the greatest symbol it has had in decades, but also an opportunity to redefine itself for the modern era. If Hamilton feels disrespected, isolated, or subtly undermined, the damage may already be irreversible. No champion stays where he isn't valued. No legend tolerates being diminished. The question is no longer whether Hamilton is struggling. It's whether Ferrari truly understands what is happening, and whether the team has the courage to confront the deeper issues behind the tension.